Welcome back. It's now time for Media Watch, our roundup of the top stories in the press. James Creedon is here with the latest from the international media. Good evening.
Good evening, Anna.
And we start with the Occupy London movement. Both the City of London and St. Paul's Cathedral are seeking legal action against protesters.
That's right. It's been going on now for over a week, well over a week. And for 1 week, St. Paul's Cathedral has been shut down to the faithful. I suppose they had to shut it down because of all these tents surrounding it. Of course, St. Paul's Cathedral is in the City of London, so in the financial district of London. That's why it's being targeted in some respects. Now, a chaplain at St. Paul's Cathedral has stood down after Occupy London protesters were told they'd have to move on, that the authorities were seeking a High Court injunction to end the siege at this cathedral. Now, it's pretty interesting stuff, and if you read on the London Evening Standard's website that the authorities in London are trying to find out ways that they could prevent the movement from spreading across the city. One ingenious idea that they've come up with is to put a sprinkler system in place in squares across the city, for example,
that
Parliament
just might be
Square.
Fun, don't you think?
They might just come out of their tents and enjoy the kind of the atmosphere. But also another piece of information in that London Evening Standard article: lawyers say it could take months, possibly up to the spring, for those court proceedings to be successful in terms of moving those protesters who said they'll stay there for as long as possible, certainly up until Christmas, until they can move on.
Will they last that long when it gets cold?
Well, that's the thing. I suppose it depends on how well insulated those tents are, and indeed the tents have been a big source of discussion. And just to show some of the debate around this, some people are saying this isn't very Christian, I suppose, to move these protesters on. What would Jesus do? That's been one of the hashtags that's been trending big time.
I believe the church has been careful to say this is only a last resort and that they're still open to some sort of settlement.
Well, there must be divisions within the church as well, because one of those chaplains at St. Paul's has stood down. You can see here also, clear the temple of peaceful protesters, so bringing back some biblical images there as well.
So that's becoming a hashtag now. What would Jesus do?
Absolutely.
Regarding Occupy London.
Yes, indeed. And another tweet that has seen a lot of success is this one. Buckingham Palace branded a charade after thermal imaging cameras find 90% of the 775 rooms empty. Now, what is that all about? Basically, an article that was doing the rounds in the British press in the past week is this one. It started in the Telegraph, where they got a thermal camera out and they shot pictures of the tents, saying that 90% of them are empty at night. In other words, the protesters go home to the comfort of their own homes and come back to protest the next day.
In which case they could last until the spring.
Exactly. But that story, which was taken up, you can see it here in the Daily Mail and elsewhere, now it looks like it might not be true. And one of the protesters went out and got a thermal camera himself to show that it's not necessarily credible. Let's have a look at the images that he filmed.
So for a brief moment, I disappeared. Ta-da!
Okay, so a lot of people are now saying that proves definitively, and you can see it here in The Guardian, in fact, some of those protesters have lodged a complaint with the Press Complaints Commission saying that this story was totally bogus and it was trying to portray the protesters in a very negative light, 90% of them not actually occupying those tents.
It's indeed very serious.
Well, I think it was...
and not very professional.
It was pretty shoddy journalism, and indeed those pictures, even if they had been true, were taken at 11 p.m. Now, I don't think any protester worth his salt is actually tucked up in bed at 11 p.m. And have a look at this tweet just to finish that. So the journalist Richard Allain, who is the journalist who broke that story for The Telegraph, who broke the fake empty tent story originally on Twitter, he's on Twitter, and this particular person, Joss Garman, is saying, apologise.
Any reaction yet?
Not just yet.
Not so far. Next, we have one story we can move to, and it's pretty funny. I was looking forward to this, I have to tell you. Halloween is coming up. I believe it's on Monday. Celebrations are planned for this weekend.
Absolutely.
Some people are not just, buying costumes for themselves. They're buying costumes for their pets.
For their pets, these crazy people. Let's have a look at this show. The first series of pictures. I'm not sure if it's the cats or the dogs, because we have both. And it's cats, first of all. And as one one
they are.
commentator on Gawker said, just look how unhappy they are and how much they hate whoever did this to them.
I'm sure they do.
They don't look too
Look
pleased.
at that hat.
And there were dogs as well. I'm not sure if we have time to have a look at them, but they looked equally unhappy.
are.
Here they are. And this is a US talk show called Wendy. And here, this is actually meant to be Kate and William. Well, that's Kate in the dog, guys. I think they could have left William be the dog, really. That's very unfair. But there you go. So Gawker is basically saying this is what you shouldn't do for Halloween. These animals really don't appreciate it.
I tend to agree with Gawker, I have to say. It's good spectacle, but perhaps not very humane treatment.
There, you said
Thanks
it.
very much. James
Thanks, Hannah.
Creedon. That was Media Watch.